let me begin with the youngest person that we have on our panel, Abhishek, who's all of 23 years of age and therefore represents this new spirit perhaps better than anybody else. Abhishek, what is your sense of this new consumer? And you know, how do you see this new consumers and what do you think is changing when you look at it from the vantage point of your business?
Thank you, sir. So for us, we see the new consumer being much more conscious about the quality of products that they're consuming. With the proliferation of cheap data, there is a lot of access to aspirational content, different brands, different qualities, right? So for us, we saw that the new consumer, especially accelerated by COVID, is much more conscious of the brands that they're buying, the qualities that they're buying, and they're also looking that the brands that they buy provide them with solutions. There has also been an increase in the kind of purchasing power that we see. So we're in the building material space, in the architectural hardware and security solutions space. So here we see that consumers, especially homeowners, they really care about what they're putting into their homes, the kinds of brands that they're putting into homes. And we're seeing that tier 2, tier 3 markets are really booming. And that's where we're trying to go, where we're trying to connect with the end consumer in tier 2, tier 3 markets and provide them with end solutions.
Ankit, Abhishek just mentioned the idea that, you're seeing this, the growth in the tier 2, tier 3 markets, the kind of so-called Bharat kind of markets. What is your experience and how do you see this really take shape?
I think so. India, of late, from what we see, has been taking a lot of pride in being Indian. And, we've had multiple data points to suggest how the consumer has forced multiple brands, multiple agencies, even media houses to go vernacular, to reach out to them in their own language. This sort of confidence in the consumer has not been, emanating usually. And, when we remind ourselves of the 80s and 90s, we see a lot of mass brand communication. All of a sudden, the consumer now demands, has much more power than what the brands had. So it's forcing, and it's a very lovely journey for brands as well, to create for that individual niche, to create and talk to that individual niche. Because all of a sudden, we see that there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of amalgamation. And the other pointer that, comes to light is how India, after a long time, is uniting. And that's uniting because of brands, because of work that we've been doing. We see Punjabi songs all across the nation. One fine day, a Punjabi rock star launches a song on YouTube, he's trending. At the same time, a South Indian movie making waves up north shows that there was the great barrier that, India had with the north and the south, east and the west, sort of because of the multiple advancements with the technology, now seems to be diluting. And there's that immense amount of power that the consumer now enjoys. And it's lovely for brands like us to create and curate things for them. We are in the fragrance business and we love doing that. When the consumer demands something for themselves, that's where we sort of tip the iceberg for them. That's the idea.
Pradeep, real estate is one of those sectors which really, is the heart. The housing need is something which is such a basic need. So from that perspective, how have you seen, what is your sense of how things are changing? What is really rising and what kind of aspirations are coming to the fore?
First of all, thank you. आपने इतने यंग पैनल में मुझे बुलाया।
जी।
इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। ऑफ कोर्स ये जो डिकेड लास्ट अगर 7-8 साल की अगर हम बात करें
जी,
सो मुझे लगता है इंडिया के अंदर एक एनर्जी जनरेट हुई है। यानी आप इसे किसी पॉलिटिकल एंगल से ना देखें, मुझे लगता है कि एक डिफरेंट इंडिया, न्यू इंडिया दिखाई दे रहा है। मैं रियल इस्टेट को बिलोंग करता हूँ, तो मैंने देखा है कि पिछले 6-7 साल में जो रियल इस्टेट सेक्टर सबसे ज़्यादा कहीं ना कहीं किसी न किसी एंगल से आप उसे कह सकते हैं कि बदनाम था, कि ये प्रॉब्लम है, बहुत सारे होम बायर्स को घर नहीं मिले। लेकिन जब से जो गवर्नमेंट है उसका माइंडसेट क्लियर रहा कि जो चीज़ें डिस्कस हो रही हैं वो मिलनी चाहिए कंज्यूमर को, तो उसने ऐसी पॉलिसी ड्राइव की। आप ये देखिए 2015 में मोदी जी ने अनाउंस किया हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल बाय 2022। एक होता है पॉलिसी का अनाउंसमेंट करना, एक होता है एग्जीक्यूट करना। कैन यू बिलीव कि 2021 तक ही लगभग 1,15,00,000 से भी ज़्यादा घरों को अप्रूवल मिल चुकी थी। लगभग 97 लाख घर ग्राउंडेड थे और लगभग 56 लाख घर लोगों को डिलीवर हो चुके थे। और उसके लिए पॉलिसीज़ बनाई गई प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना जैसी, जिससे एक जो कॉमन मैन है, एक ऐसा पर्सन जिसकी हाउस होल्ड इनकम केवल 50,000 रुपये है, उसको कैसे कम से कम EMI में क्वालिटी घर प्रोवाइड कराए जा सकें। रेगुलेटर इन प्लेस किया जिससे जो डेवलपर हैं वो राइट मैनर में इस काम को करें। तो मुझे लगता है कि ये पूरा का पूरा इकोसिस्टम जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं जब कोई एक इंडस्ट्री रन करती है तो उससे डराइव होने लगता है। जैसा अभिषेक ने अभी कहा कि वो भी होम फर्निशिंग ऐसी चीज़ों में काम कर रहे हैं। माइंडसेट चेंज हो गया है कि एक होता है कि केवल और केवल प्रॉफिटेबल बिजनेस में काम करना, एक है क्वांटम बेस्ड बिजनेस में काम करना और उससे अपने ब्रांड को बनाना। आई थिंक सो आज की डेट में जो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है वो एक ऐसा सेगमेंट बन चुका है जिससे टॉप से बॉटम तक एक जॉब क्रिएशन हो रहा है और उसके बाद एक कॉमन मैन को घर मिल रहा है और क्वालिटी घर मिल रहा है। और जो अभिषेक जैसे जो सप्लायर्स हैं उनको भी एक बड़ा बिजनेस मिल रहा है और उनके अपने जो प्रॉफिट मार्जिन हैं उनको श्रिंक करके कॉम्पिटिटिव वे में लाना पड़ रहा है। यानी इन माय वे आप ना अच्छा काम करें, मनी बाय प्रोडक्ट है, वो खुद ब खुद बनती है।
तो ये बताइए कि जैसे आपने कहा अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की बात की, तो कुछ इनोवेशंस आए हैं? क्योंकि हमेशा ये माना जाता था कि भाई to actually deliver a product which is of a good quality, given the kind of prices and given the kind of the infrastructure that we had, वो हमेशा एक तरह की दिक्कत मानी जाती थी। तो क्या कुछ इनोवेशंस हुए हैं यहाँ जो आप जिसके बारे में आप बताना चाहेंगे?
यस, बिल्कुल। देखिए, जब आप किसी भी मास हाउसिंग को क्रिएट करते हैं तो बिना टेक्नोलॉजी के वो क्रिएट हो नहीं सकते। आपको ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी उनके अंदर लानी पड़ेगी जिससे ज़्यादा जल्दी घर बन सके और क्वालिटी बेस बन सके। आज इंडिया के अंदर जो रियल एस्टेट है टेक्नोलॉजी के अंदर इस वक्त सबसे ज़्यादा एडवांस हो चुका है। जितने भी मेट्रो सिटीज़ में हैं जिसमें ग्रेड ए डेवलपर काम कर रहे हैं, ब्रांडेड डेवलपर काम कर रहे हैं, वो टेक्नोलॉजी का इन्वॉल्वमेंट प्रॉपर कर रहे हैं। और इसीलिए ये हो पा रहा है कि जब आप करोड्स ऑफ करोड्स घर बना रहे हैं, आप यानी एक नंबर्स देखिए, मैं बड़ा सिंप्लीफाई करूँ इसे, 2030 तक लगभग 6 करोड़ घरों की नीड है, बिकॉज अर्बनाइजेशन जो है वो बड़ी संख्या में हो रहा है। अगर 6 करोड़ घर आपको अगले यानी 1 करोड़ घर बनाए हैं और अगले 8 साल में लगभग 5 करोड़ घर और बनाने हैं, तो इसके लिए टेक्नोलॉजी की नीड होगी। और ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी जो आज की डेट में वर्ल्ड में बहुत जगह यूज़ हो रही है। आज आप चाइना की बात करें, हांगकांग की बात करें, सिंगापुर की बात करें, तो वहाँ पे घर बनाने का जो टाइम है वो 12 महीने से 18 महीने का है। इंडिया में आज भी ये टाइम 4 साल का है। मुझे लगता है जो टेक्नोलॉजी है वो बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करने वाली है आने वाले टाइम में।
एक चीज़ जो what Ankit had, one thing that you had mentioned, Ankit, was this the fact that this kind of the fact that the differences across regions etc. seem to be narrowing, and there is in some senses a sense of a common kind of a mindset, or at least common reference points that seems to be emerging. Does this not contrast with the idea that actually more and more businesses have to actually pay more attention to regional differences, or the fact that they have to customize their strategies for individual regions? So, I mean, how do you reconcile these two different kind of ideas?
To be very fair, it's not about bifurcating and looking at different sections of the community or states essentially. It's more about creating relevance. The point of view that came across was the consumer now demanding more power from the brands back, whereas a national level television campaign would have worked essentially well for brands, or let's say a mass product at multiple lengths would have roamed across from Delhi to Kanyakumari per se. Each state and each preferences in tastes are now being catered by multiple brands. Yes, there are consumers who now take pride in wearing their, in speaking the language, in wearing their own custom clothes. So that is where the brands see an opportunity. It's not largely a force at hand also, because we are opportunistic people at the end of the day. And wherever we find that we are able to connect to the consumers, that's where we raise our hand saying that, hey, I'm here and I'm available for you. So that's the sort of mindset that comes in. There's a lot of confidence that the consumer now has in terms of speaking in vernacular, conversing in vernacular. Earlier, there would be sessions of, people wanting to learn English, people wanting to consume English. We still remember the era where newspapers would, it was a precedent to be able to read an English newspaper. But now it's a matter of pride that I still have my Hindi or a Bengali newspaper at my place. That's where the brands come into picture and state that, we want to raise our hand that, hey, we are here for the people who want to do that as well.
Abhishek, what is your view on this?
Yeah, so to echo Ankit, I think that as brands, we need to be conscious that a consumer is now asking the question, why should we care about you, right? Why, it's not necessarily enough to just supply a product, but what is the message that is there associated with your brand? And then additionally, yes, I think that the brands or consumers actually care about, their regional differences. Yes, there is more consumption across the board of multimedia, but you still care about what regionally your differences are. So as a strategy, we are also focusing on communications and products that can be specific to different regions within the country.
प्रदीप, हम जब बात कर रहे थे तो आपने ये मेंशन किया था कि कोविड की वजह से काफ़ी चेंजेस आए थे और उसकी वजह से कुछ नई अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ भी दिख रही हैं. तो क्या आप किस तरह का कोविड की वजह से क्या चेंजेस आए हैं आप?
ऑफ कोर्स, यानी रियल एस्टेट में अगर कोई चीज़ जान डालने वाली है तो वो कोविड है, ब्लेसिंग इन डिस्गाइज. आज आप देखिए, बिफोर कोविड जो सीन था, मैंने बहुत सारे लोगों को देखा जब वो घर के लिए डिसीजन लेते थे, सो वो कंपेयर कर रहे होते थे कि जो हाउसिंग यील्ड है वो नॉर्मली डराइव करती है 2.5% के नियर अबाउट, एंड मार्केट में जो अदर अपॉर्चुनिटी थी वो 8%, 9% और मोर देन 10%. सो नॉर्मली उसका माइंडसेट रहता था कि मैं जो अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट है हायर यील्ड में इन्वेस्ट करूं और अपने लिए जो घर है वो मैं रेंट पे भी बियर कर सकता हूं. माइट भी मैं जहां काम करता हूं उसके सराउंडिंग ही ले लूं, क्यों मुझे ज़रूरत है कि मैं एक घर परचेज़ करूं. लेकिन आप देखिए कोविड ने क्या चेंज किया. जब कोविड की फर्स्ट वेव आई तो उस वक्त लोगों ने जो किराए के मकानों में थे उन लोगों ने पहली बार पूरा बिहेवियरल चेंज देखा अपने लैंडलॉर्ड के अंदर, कि क्योंकि यानी सिचुएशन बिल्कुल एंटायरली चेंज थी. जैसे ही कोविड की जो फर्स्ट बार अनलॉक होना शुरू हुआ, लोग घरों के ऊपर, यानी जबकि बहुत सारे वेबिनार्स में डिस्कस हो रहा था कि जॉब्स लॉस होगा बहुत सारा, कौन घर खरीदेगा, लेकिन रियल एस्टेट कंपनी लाइक अस बहुत डिफरेंट एक्सपीरियंस था कि जैसे ही अनलॉक होना शुरू हुआ लोग ऐसे घर खरीद रहे थे कि जैसे ये पता नहीं दोबारा मिलेंगे या नहीं मिलेंगे. तो उसका बेसिक रीज़न समझने की कोशिश की तो यही मिला कि सर जो हमने उस कोविड टाइम में फील किया है वो चीज़ अब हम समझ गए कि हमें छोटा या बड़ा कैसा भी हो एक घर हमारा ज़रूर होना चाहिए. और कहीं ना कहीं वो चीज़ ऐसी डराइव हुई कि आप लास्ट 3 साल की बात करें, 2 से 3 साल की, तो रियल एस्टेट जो है एंटायरली चेंज हो चुका है.
Any other experiences that any one of you may have about how, and not just in the immediate short run, but do you see this in any way fundamentally changing anything, at a consumer level?
Yes,
I think
Can
so.
Yeah, please.
I think so. A lot of value of work-life balance was learned. Value of quality of life was learned. People living in metropolitan cities essentially got a chance to go back to their homes that they called. They learned after a very long time, the urban India sort of learned what rural India was living through and the changes that it went through. There was a newer perspective to that generation that came back again post-COVID. There's a lot of data to support that people are coming back to the cities for jobs and all of that. But that perspective now of a quality of life that you want to share is a very interesting change for us to map. To be very fair, that hasn't settled yet, is what I would like to sort of comment on. it still needs to, the guy who's went back and come back again to the urban India now needs to contemplate what he wants now, in the sense, what are the choices that he makes in terms of work-life balances? What are the sort of jobs that he applies for? What is the sort of work that he wants to do? Because to be very honest, urban India had, rural India had a lot more entrepreneurship then, with smaller businesses essentially. That also adds to the wave of entrepreneurship that we are seeing. Because now there's a challenge that I work at my time, I work at my ways, and I work for what I think drives me. That adds on to the power to what the story of India that we want to talk about. That's a very interesting note that we are closely following as well, because it's changing and it's extremely dynamic in nature per se.
Abhishek, when we were talking, you had mentioned the fact that the whole thing about the international brand versus the Indian brand, and the fact that, is today being an Indian brand, particularly in a category like yours, is that an advantage or a disadvantage when consumers think of international brands in the same space versus an Indian brand? How are these two weighed today?
Yeah, so I'll actually kind of take this question back to how ozone originated and then bring it back to the question. So my father had originally wanted to become the distributor of a large German hardware company. And then when he landed in Germany about 20 years ago, he was told that India में opportunity नहीं है, quality नहीं समझते लोग, और purchasing power नहीं है. So he did not even receive a catalog from the German company. And so when he came back, his thought was that we need to build a brand that is for Indian consumers, that is able to provide products that are international quality or better. Right? And then 20 years later, now for that particular product range, Germany happens to be our largest export market. So that is not just an evolution of ozone, but that's an evolution of brand India. It's the evolution of how India is being perceived at a global stage. It's not just about labor arbitrage or outsourcing anymore. I think, and also many people in this room have showcased the power of Indian brands going global, the kind of technology, services, and products that we have the capability of creating. Right? So I think there has been a shift in the global perception. However, to add to this, another illustration or example that we faced as ozone is that sometimes when we, within India, bid for government projects or big builder projects, there is a discount that is given to an Indian manufacturer. कि Indian manufacturer है तो पता नहीं quality सही होगी या service उस quality की मिलेगी versus a French or an Italian or a German manufacturer, right? So for the brand India to continue growing, it needs to start with each and every one of us in each and every one of our daily consumption habits. We need to put Indian brands and homegrown brands out there. We need to get it out of our minds that European hai to automatically superior hai, right? So once we start doing that in our daily life, right, that's when brand India will evolve. That's when we will continue growing in an international market.
So that's well said, Abhishek. But let me challenge that a bit, just to make it interesting. It's true, certainly, that there is growing pride and there is a resurgence in the Indian kind of entrepreneurial space. But on the other hand, if you were to think about Indian businesses and brands that have a global presence, that are really strong globally, there are that many of them, right? Even in categories which were traditionally considered to be Indian categories, like tea, there isn't a global Indian brand that is significant, right?
Right.
There are Sri Lankan brands that are global, but not Indian brands. So, is there a reason why that anybody in the panel, anybody is free to answer this, that we believe that so far, in spite of all the advantages, in spite of clearly the change that we are seeing on the ground, we still somehow have not made enough of a transition to being a genuine global player?
So I think, again, as I said, it has to begin at home, right? So once at home we start taking that pride and we start putting in that effort. And I think that the potential is there. I think there's a lot of leaps that are being taken. And I think that it's only a matter of time, personally, once, we've gone past that phase. For the past 25, 30 years of globalization within India, there was a lot more export of services, right? But now that India has started producing more technology and more products, I think it's only a matter of time before we're able to go into different categories in a global manner.
Ankit?
Actually, if you look at it in the perspective of time, we were under a rule of a European body for about 200 plus years. And it's been not even half of that, and we have left a mark on the global economy now. The billion story now seems to be coming out, specifically from the FMCG context. There's a lot more brands now wanting to come to India rather than India wanting to go out, without realizing that Indian presence anyways is there. As a thorough marketer, we've seen FMCG brands that were core Indian brands to tap into the Indian diaspora in their economies, to now finally taking a step. I'm very honored to see that one of the largest sports of the globe is now sponsored by an Indian organization. And that's the first time that's happened. And that's very inspirational for someone like us, the younger generation who's now, what happened to us about, I think so 80, 85 years old ago, we've now managed to change that 200 years of pressure, dominance in less than half the time. And we are on, the verdict of India being the golden bird that we've only read of with historians per se. I feel that it's a newer breed of people that are wanting to live in that in their own ways. Maybe some are highly aspirational, maybe some are not, but they are leaving a mark essentially, and that's what sort of drives people like us.
प्रदीप, मैं आपसे अगर ये पूछूं कि क्या ये एक कारण ये है शायद कि इंडियन मार्केट भी लार्ज है, यहाँ भी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ अभी बहुत हैं, या कोई एक माइंडसेट शिफ्ट की क्या ज़रूरत है? अगर हम कहें कि भाई ग्लोबल अगर आपको प्लेयर बनना है तो क्या कोई तरह का अंदर अभी जिस तरह से हम सोचते हैं उसमें कोई बदलाव लाने की ज़रूरत है या ज़रूरत नहीं है? आपको क्या लगता है?
सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैं इसको इस तरीके से कहूँगा कि जो आज का जो कंज्यूमर बिहेवियर है वो बहुत कंज्यूमर इन्फॉर्म्ड हो चुका है. आज कोई भी प्रोडक्ट आप उसे अगर सर्व कर रहे हैं और उसकी क्वालिटी अप टू मार्क नहीं है, सो आप उस ब्रांड को इस्टेब्लिश नहीं कर सकते. इन टर्म्स ऑफ मनी तो एटलीस्ट नहीं कर सकते कि आप उसका प्राइस कम ज़्यादा करें. मुझे लगता है आज सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है कि आप क्वालिटी चीज़ें उनको डिलीवर करें, क्वालिटी के ऊपर फोकस करें, तो जो आपका कस्टमर है वही आपका खुद ही ब्रांड एम्बेसडर बन जाता है. सो फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे मैं आपको बताता हूँ, मैं खुद रियल एस्टेट पर्सन नहीं हूँ. मेरी लाइफ का हाफ पोर्शन शेयर मार्केट में निकला है, फाइनेंशियल मार्केट में, और मैं रियल एस्टेट में बहुत 7-8 साल पुराना ही पर्सन हूँ. और आज इंडिया की वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग कंपनी मैं भी चला रहा हूँ. सो ये कैसे पॉसिबल है कि आप क्वालिटी डिलीवर करें, आप जो कमिटमेंट कर रहे हैं उनसे वो डिलीवर करें. आप ये मान के चलिए कि इंडिया के अंदर इतनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हैं कि आपको किसी और कंट्री या किसी और ब्रांड जो ग्लोबली ब्रांड है उनसे आप सीख सकते हैं. उनकी जो उनका मेथड है उसको आप ले सकते हैं, अडॉप्ट कर सकते हैं. आप ये देखिए कि कल एक IPO लॉन्च हो रहा था जिसमें स्वामी गुरु रामदेव जी का जो रुचि सोया के नाम से जो उन्होंने, आप ये देखिए कि वो जो पर्सन है वो किस बैकग्राउंड से आ रहे हैं. आज उन्होंने इतनी बड़ी कंपनी, एक पूरा का पूरा इकोसिस्टम बना दिया जिसके अंदर क्या वैल्यूएशन बना दी और क्या चीज़, यानी एक डिफरेंट लाइन में चलेगी. मुझे लगता है कि अल्टीमेट आपको प्रोडक्ट डिलीवर करना है, ब्रांड ऑफ कोर्स वो आपका जो ब्रांड एम्बेसडर है वो खुद ही बनाएगा.
One of the advantages I think in today's world is the fact that thanks to technology, the differences between countries, the legacy differences between countries have narrowed. I mean, it is possible for everybody to be on a level playing field, relatively speaking, because of the fact that, you have access that is instant and easy. There is capital that is available in much more, is much more adequacy, today capital adequacy than ever existed before. Given all this, do you think technology is likely to be a big driver in taking Indian businesses and brands globally, Abhishek? Do you see the role, a big opportunity that technology is giving us?
So I think technology is a great equalizer, right? It helps provide opportunities to people, and I think that's where it has the largest potential. I think end consumers are also looking for technology. I think there is a democratization of data. There's a democratization of opportunity that technology is able to provide, which then helps companies build products or services that are able to go global.
Ankit, do you see this?
I think technology is something that has reduced time lags. Gestation period per se has reduced because of technology. That has made us more impatient. That has made everyone more impatient in all senses. That gives us a unique opportunity to think more, maybe aspire to do more and do more faster. What has happened of late is capital no longer is a restraint in the economy, because there's free-flowing capital to throw at ideas that might click, that might not, but there's enough amount of risk appetite that the economy now has. Keeping that in mind, for a country like India to go global is much easier, because we now all of a sudden find ourselves at a much even pace, at a much, at a very good par or at arm's length to what earlier couldn't happen. Logistics times have shrunk. We've seen technology disrupt the logistic market in terms of the amount of time taken for products to reach from one shore to the other. We've seen understanding of consumer ethos become easier. So for brands who are deeply invested in understanding who the consumer is and what their preferences are, that has become more sure, that has become more apt. That gives us immense amount of potential as an organization, as a country, to be more better poised for the opportunities that we had. It's easier for us to get registrations, get legal checks, get legalities done in multiple countries at one single go. At the same time, what has also changed because of technology is within the Indian subcontinent, India has, and Indians per se, have gained a lot more respect over the last few years because of their trade practices. Of course, there's a lot of work, like Abhishek was mentioning, that needs to be done at each individual as an Indian level, so that we uphold that trust that we are sort of wanting to build in the in the global economy. That part, with the technology, spreading the word of mouth for a marketer per se, was very integral for us to build on brands. That word of mouth can spread like wildfire given because of the likes of social media. That's the change that we sort of want to understand.
Yeah, but one thing that occurs to me is that, brand Indian is perhaps much stronger than Indian brands today. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I'm sorry, but I would agree. But that gives us a leeway. That's a door of opportunity for us to latch on, right? If the word India resounds more, Indian brands, of course, will latch on sooner or later to spread across to multiple shores. And that opportunity, honestly, we never enjoyed for the last N number of years. And we do grab onto opportunities very well. We are a billion plus strong people. And, we fight for that 11 spots in the Indian cricket team. We've been trained to do that. So that's very interesting time to be, alive in.
प्रदीप, ये जो नॉर्मली जब हम बात करते हैं कि भाई अगर इंडिया को ग्लोबल जाना है और इंडियन बिजनेसेस को ग्लोबल जाना है, तो शायद मौका सबसे ज़्यादा होगा सर्विसेज में, और जबकि एक तरह से दूसरी तरफ ये जो स्ट्रैटेजी है वो कहें कि नहीं, जब तक आपका मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बेस स्ट्रांग नहीं हो तब तक आप ट्रूली ग्लोबल नहीं बन सकते. तो आपका क्या, व्हाट इज़ योर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इसमें?
नहीं, बिल्कुल आपने सही कहा कि जो अगर हमें ग्लोबली जाना है तो जो उनके स्टैंडर्ड हैं वो मीट आउट करने पड़ेंगे. और ऑफ कोर्स जैसा अभी आपने कहा कि जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसमें उसका बहुत बड़ा रोल है. जो प्रोडक्ट हम डिलीवर कर रहे हैं उन प्रोडक्ट की जो क्वालिटी है वो ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड की हमें लानी पड़ेगी. अभी क्या है कि क्योंकि इंडिया में जो प्रोडक्ट की जो बनाने की जो माइंडसेट है वो है कि उसको कैसे रीजनेबल प्राइस पे बनाया जाए, तो उसके अंदर कहीं ना कहीं कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ होता है। आई थिंक सो जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसमें एक बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करेगी। एक चीज़ बस इसमें मैं बी कैजुअल में इसमें मेरे को स्कूल में बचपन में पढ़ाते थे कि एक खेत को 1 एकड़ को अगर 4 लोग एक दिन में जोतते हैं तो 1 एकड़ को एक आदमी कितने दिन में जोतेगा। तो आज का जो पर्सन है वो ये कहता है 1 घंटे में, क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी आ चुकी है। सो आई थिंक सो जो माइंडसेट है वो बिल्कुल चेंज हो चुका है, और जो प्रोडक्ट हैं जैसे यंग जेम्स आपके सामने बैठे, इनका माइंडसेट है कि क्वालिटी प्रोडक्ट डिलीवर करना है। कंपेयर कहाँ से करना है कि जो ग्लोबली प्रोडक्ट बन रहे हैं, क्योंकि जो फाइट है वो इसी चीज़ की है। क्योंकि आज जो कस्टमर है वो सोशल मीडिया पे इतना एक्टिव है कि सारे के सारे प्रोडक्ट उसके सामने हैं, वो इजीली कंपेयर कर सकता है। एक बार वो ऑर्डर करता है, दूसरी बार वो उस वेबसाइट पे या उस प्रोडक्ट की तरफ जाएगा नहीं अगर क्वालिटी डिलीवर नहीं है। तो आई थिंक सो इट्स माई व्यू कि जो ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड है वो मैच करने पड़ेंगे और वो होंगे।
So let me ask the younger panelists this, that do you think the future, if we were to look at a strategy for going global, is it likely to be more in the Web3 sort of space, or is it likely to be more in more traditional sectors?
I think so. One can't go without the other currently. It's practically impossible to, at least in the lifestyle space that we belong, to neglect Web 3.0 and not have a existence in the physical realm as well. So it needs to be in tandem and one taking care of the other that ways.
So I think Web3, the beauty of Web3 is that Web3 doesn't care whether they are Indian or American or Portuguese, right? Web3 exists in a much more decentralized network. So of course there is opportunity there, and as I said, there is democratized opportunity in technology, right? But so yes, I'm sure Indian brands and Indian individuals will create a lot of differentiation within Web3. But that's not the only place that technology, where India can go into with technology. I think the kinds of softwares that we're producing or the kinds of products that we're producing has the potential to go global. So I think there are those are two separate tracks.
Okay, so let's open this out. Let's see what if there are any questions that the audience has that of our panelists. Can we circulate some mics, etc. if there are questions, please? There are some hands I can see.
Abhishek, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, yeah.
You were very passionately talking about Indian brands and how we need to, put our full belief behind our own brands and stuff like that. But, it's also a fact that a lot of times we do get disappointed in terms of the quality when we start comparing. Do you think we are at that stage when we can compete in quality in most of the spheres? Like, your field of play may be different than a lot of other things that we might use in our daily usage. But to compete at an international level with brands where made in India is actually a brand to reckon with, you think we are ready to be there already?
So that's a fair point. My point was that, sometimes what happens is there's an automatic assumption that there may be a difference in quality due to an Indian manufacturer, right? That's the difference, right? An Italian product may be superior, sure, right? And maybe in a lot of sectors, India will take time, Indian manufacturing and services will take time to catch up. But my point was more related that it deserves a fair shot and that we need to get it out of that automatic subconscious reaction when we're choosing between, let's say, an Italian brand and an Indian brand for a product that may be there. that is something that we need to look at.
But in that sense, somebody has worked hard over decades to get to that Italian brand. And if I have the money to spend, frankly, would I not be, in the right frame of mind to compare that, okay, I'm getting in this much money an international brand and in this much money an Indian brand. So it's only, I think, legitimate that I compare and then I go for someone who's proved themselves over the years. That's why maybe you suffer from the assumption. Isn't that fair? Like from a consumer's point of view?
Yeah, so I think that's perfectly fair to make that comparison and reach the conclusion that yes, there is a quality difference and I can afford it, and so I want to choose the Italian brand. My point is that we need to just be careful in the way that we're comparing and just be more broad-minded during that comparison journey.
Hello, I have a question. Okay. You were into business and see, everybody is earning in a very hard way. So why should I go for the brand just because that is Indian?
I didn't catch that.
I'm saying that when there is a choice, it's a global market, right? So when I'm choosing with my hard-earned money, then why will I go? Because it's not a movement which I'm going to sponsor. It's an open market. Then why will I choose Indian brand over? Because there are, even in the smallest, there are brands, definitely, they made very big in India. They proved themselves, they competed. But just because it's Indian brand, can you expect a consumer to buy it just because it's Indian and I'm an Indian?
If I could take that one. One, there's an idea of giving back to the community that we are associated with. Not, of course, everybody, sort of partakes in that. But there are categories like which we operate in, wherein, to be very fair, a product made in India and made for India is much better oriented than something that comes in from a Europe or a US. The reasons is we do understand skin types, we do understand climatic conditions, we do understand what goes in our system in terms of food, because we deal in fragrances. Technically, any European fragrance is meant to last in about a 13, 14 degree as a temperature would be about a 2-hour game. The amount of spice that goes around in India cannot be matched in terms of the aroma that a fragrance should give. Hence, we actually do take a lot of pride in creating and curating those fragrances for India and for the Indians, because it is honestly a much better product that is suited for the country here and for the people living in, in India that ways. It depends, of course, on category to category. If there's a capital block, if there are things that need robust capital investments, there are times where technology does play a hurdle in terms of edging towards the Europeans or towards China per se, in terms of the investments that have gone through. But there are multiple categories that if we sort of keep our eyes open and minds open without a marketing gimmick in the head that whatever comes in as an import is very nice, we do give an opportunity for a local to grow. That's the interesting part of it.
And if I can just add to that point, we're not asking you to choose over a better quality international brand and Indian brand, right? That's not the point here. The point is, it's a limited point in terms of giving it a fair shot and looking at how we are comparing different brands. And then to echo Ankit, a lot of times Indian companies are better positioned to create products that are specific to our societies.
Yeah, there's a hand back.
Okay. So my question is for mainly to the young entrepreneurs because, sorry sir, but because I want to know that since you guys have just started, no matter what, so many experienced people are around you. You are new. That is a fact, right? So I want to know that whether the government or there are other hurdles like things like the rules and regulations, the culture, if that is do you see that as an opportunity or do you see that as a hurdle? Do you feel like the rules and regulations could be better so that your entrepreneurial objectives would match better for India, or yeah.
To be very fair, I think so. This generation is much better suited and has much larger opportunities than what the previous generations had, given the technology space that we had. Plus, I personally view the generation gap in the eyes of market share. These guys have created a market share for themselves. They're not wanting to lose. It's our job to get it from them. So if I struggle for it, I get it. If somebody doesn't, it doesn't. But we definitely are much more opportune, and we have a lot more opportunity given the technological space, given the education that has been imparted onto us, and the exposure that social media and the likes of an earning India has given us. We are in a much better fit than what the earlier generations were at any given point of time to grab all of the opportunity per se.
I also think the barrier to entry has reduced, right? I personally have had the privilege to have a platform that I've joined on, but I think in general what I see is a lot of people my age starting out small businesses in very specific niches, solving problems for people of their own kind, right? And so the barrier of entries have reduced, and the kind of niches that are available have grown. Thank you.
I think there was one hand there. That's the last question we can take. So if you can just go there, yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. Going global means competing with the global brands in terms of quantity, quality, price. And while doing so, are we actually creating jobs in India? That's the question. Thank you. More jobs.
So, in terms of real estate, I think so कि ये जितनी भी अपॉर्चुनिटी क्रिएट हो रही है, इससे जॉब जो इंडिया में है वो बहुत ह्यूज जॉब क्रिएशन होने वाला है. आने वाले 5-7 साल में आप देखेंगे कि एक बहुत बड़ा जॉब क्रिएशन इंडिया में ऑन द वे है. ऑफ कोर्स पूरा का पूरा इकोसिस्टम रन करने लगा है इस वक्त. जितनी भी चीज़ें आप देखें, कहीं एक एनर्जी है इस सिस्टम में. आई थिंक सो, मुझे लगता है कि एक जॉब क्रिएशन का बहुत बड़ा मॉडल आपको अगले कुछ सालों में नज़र आएगा. क्योंकि डिस्कशन हो रहा था क्वालिटी पे और कस्टमर की जो चॉइस है उसके ऊपर, तो मेरा उस पर ये कहना है कि कस्टमर इज़ किंग. सो उसको अल्टीमेट जो क्वालिटी है अगर हम ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड की देंगे तो ऑफ कोर्स हम उनसे कम्पीट कर पाएंगे. और जो हमारा इंडियन कंज्यूमर है वो कहीं ना कहीं सेंटिमेंटल है. मुझे लगता है कि अगर हम उनको क्वालिटी डिलीवर कर रहे हैं तो डेफिनेटली दे विल वोट अस.
With that, I think I will thank my panelists. We had the benefit of experience and the benefit of youth, and we heard a diversity of viewpoints, and the audience for raising some interesting questions. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.